All right, we're live. Welcome back. We have Bill here with us for part 2 of our tree inquiry. So we're going to start off with stuff that's a little more unusual. So what is the strangest, craziest things you've seen as an arborist here?
Charlotte, North Carolina, I saw a red oak get hit by lightning and shards of wood the size of a dagger and obviously pointed had embedded itself into the wooden siding on a house.
That is crazy.
That was crazy.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of weird lightning stuff here with trees. So if a tree is hit by lightning, does it always die? Because I always thought it did, but now I'm seeing trees that are surviving. Usually our palms die.
Not always. You know, palms are full of water, so when they get hit by lightning, they sort of get supercharged as far as heat goes, and it just doesn't die right away. It normally will die. Hardwood trees can survive it. You see lots of trees out that have a lightning scar on them that are still alive. It just depends on how bad it was. In certain areas, it'll attract hardwood borers, or in the case of a pine beetle, which can get into the tree and then finish it off. But if it can survive all that, yeah, they'll live. There's varying degrees of the strength of the lightning. Sometimes it's just a flash, like the lightning may have hit something else and then jumped over onto the palm or the bushes under the tree. So that's not as severe a strike, and sometimes it can survive that. A lot of times we've seen where the lightning goes all the way down to the ground, gets into the landscape lighting.
Oh yeah, or the irrigation system.
Wiring, and gets back into the house and blows fries TVs and refrigerators and all that kind of stuff. It's great.
Yeah, we've had the irrigation system in particular. We have on like the 2-wire systems where it hits something anywhere near it, and it'll take out 12 decoders or something ridiculous. And next thing you know, you've got a $9,000 bill to fix everything. So one of the things that I saw that I think was kind of odd, and I've seen it here locally, is I'll see palms with a single trunk that have multiple heads. Which I didn't know you could do that. Like it's kind of like the Siamese twin version of palms.
I don't know that anybody's done it on purpose. I see a lot of times palms that have boron deficiency will get that, they'll create another head, and then it will grow. But there are sable palms out in nature. For example, there's one in Twin Eagles in a common area by the golf course that actually has 4 heads on. It's almost like a trident. And it's really cool. You don't see things like that. I saw one not too long ago, and I can't remember where it was. It was somewhere that had 2 heads on it, and they were pretty fully developed trunks that were past that point where they were joined.
So it develops a second head, or is it 2 that actually grow together?
No, it's actually it's a second head on the same tree.
So I'm told. Like I said, this is all very recent to me. That palms are what are they called? Palms are called.
The palm's a monocot.
A monocot. That's where we were going. I knew that there was a special word for it. So palms are a monocot.
And grasses are monocots.
Grasses are monocot.
They grow. Their growing point is the tip.
So that's what a monocot means? Is it grows from the tip?
I'm not sure if that's what it means in Latin, but yeah, that's basically what it is.
So I guess in my mind, I started thinking that inside a palm, because I know when I cut a palm, it feels like it's a bunch of fibers that are growing vertically. Yep. So I just assumed that it was like a whole bunch of little pieces of grass inside of the trunk.
It's solid, corky wood. It's, a chunk of royal palm, compared to a chunk of live wood, they're really heavy.
So if they do get, and they manage to seem to survive for a while, there's interesting pests that go into palms.
Yeah.
Was it the palm weevil? Have you ever seen those larvae?
Yeah.
I was. Was it? And they're actually tasty when you grill them. I'm not kidding.
Okay. I'll take your word on that.
They're really good. I was in Ecuador, and they grill them, and they're large. These palm larvae they're probably about that big, and you can hear them inside the tree.
Yeah.
So they go around listening for this like scratching, knocking noise. I guess I don't know if that's noise. And then they pull them out of the tree, and then they throw them on the Barbie, and you have grilled palm weevil.
I've actually been around pine trees that are so infested. You can actually hear, I guess they're feeding inside the tree, right under the bark. You can hear it.
So, again, palms usually are pretty resilient, so they seem to survive for a while, short of getting struck by lightning. Lightning seems to take them out relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So, And that's an interesting thing. It's hard for us as managers to keep an eye on palms all the time.
Yeah.
One thing, a Washingtonian palm, how tall are those guys?
Yeah, 70.
I mean, so we're not looking, usually as managers, we're not looking 80 feet up in the air.
Right.
We probably should be. But it's hard to take in everything. As a human, it would be hard to 360-degree total awareness all the time. We're looking at gutter systems, we're looking at walls, sidewalks, that kind of stuff. Palms, sometimes we'll see them do strange things. We'll see them start to kind of brown or yellow, and 95% of the time it seems to return and they're fine. Sometimes it doesn't return and they die relatively quickly, and then you end up with all the palms fall off the top. Sometimes the whole top falls off. And so we've seen that. You talked about penciling. What is penciling?
Pencil necking is a term that has been used in the industry to describe the narrowing of the trunk of a palm tree just underneath the bud of the top of the tree, the crown of the tree. And it's normally caused by lack of growth of the tree, for example, which could be caused by nutrient deficiency, overpruning, poor soil conditions for the tree, environmental causes of a flood, something that could have, harmed the tree for a period of time. Sometimes they'll grow out of it, sometimes they won't. I had an experience down in Marco Island once when I was in my younger days. There was a royal palm that was severely pencil necking, and the top was getting really small on it. So I went up and I poured manganese right into the bud of the tree, and Tech-Mag was the product, and it actually snapped out of it and started growing again. And I drove by that tree 3-4 years later, and it see where it was still narrow, but the tree actually grew back out. It looked like an hourglass.
So I've seen
started
that.
to grow again.
I have seen that in palms, and I don't know if it's all of that, but I will see where, if you're looking at a palm, it gets thinner and then thicker and then thinner and then thicker as it goes up the trunk.
Yeah, it gets in that point of constriction, whether it was caused by, environmental or lack of nutrients or whatever, but then something changed and it started to grow in a healthy pattern again, and above that point.
So in those cases, is there a concern of a structural failure?
It could, if it's it all depends on how big that crown is up top and how heavy it is. And I mean, palms also get a lot of cracks in them that can just because the way they twist and bend in the wind. Washington palms especially, because they're very tall. When you have a wound in a palm tree, it doesn't heal like a hardwood tree does. You can't do that. So it tends to erode around it, and the crack may get bigger. The area of good outer bark around it, they call that, falls off, gets smaller. So there's a weak point in the palm, and there can be. I was looking at one yesterday that looked like I was surprised it didn't go over last fall on the wind. So they're very resilient.
That's always from, or that not always, but that's generally a result of nutrient deficiencies.
Something happened to the palm at some point in time, that caused a had an adverse effect on it.
So I might be misremembering this because I would have been relatively young when this happened, but I thought I remembered a period of time when they were injecting the palms with something.
Yeah, tetracycline for lethal yellow.
That was it.
In Naples, in the 70s, the lethal yellow craze happened. Started on the East Coast in Miami, and then worked its way over here on all the Jamaican tall coconuts. That was the original species of coconut. And of course, Miami losing all its palm trees. Oh my God, that's the end of the world. And then the city of Naples was very proactive, and they started an inoculation program. A guy named Terry Bedlam, who a good friend of mine, he actually came to work with me later on after he left the city, and he's retired now. But he started that program, and they inoculated a lot of trees. Now, inoculations are good for the tree. They don't heal them. So whenever you pound something and make a hole into the trunk of the coconut palm, it's never going to heal over. So a lot of times you'll see, go down to the beach and look at some of the old coconuts. Lower 4 feet of the tree is riddled with all these holes. That's normally what it was, an injection site. Now they do a lot of injections now for nutrients. And I've always kind of been against that because of does have great benefit on the health of the tree. So you have to kind of weigh that. And now we're faced with lethal bronzing, which is there's a vector that gets into the Phoenix palms, the Sylvesters that everybody's planting now, the Canary Island date palm, the medjool palm. It works the same way as the coconut palm, and lethal yellow coconut palm. So they inject for that. Now, I've been keeping a close eye on that, and the county tells me that there's hardly any cases of it in our county. But there's people that are out there telling people, oh, you got to inoculate your trees. I don't believe in inoculating unless, as a preventative, unless it's in the air. Because you're wounding the tree. You don't have to.
Yeah, it's interesting also just to see all the different palms that I feel like we see. And again, I was young, so I probably wasn't paying attention. When I was younger, like a Bismarck palm was an exotic thing.
Yeah.
We didn't see a Bismarck. I can't remember who it was. It was Kensington or someplace had like these Bismarck palms.
Yep.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
And now I feel like there's a ton of.
Yeah, it used to be just select, like people who were palm collectors. You could see them in their yards. And now you see them everywhere.
Right. And with the canaries and
yeah.
some very expensive palm trees now, and I understand people do want to protect them, so they're probably trying to be proactive with those injections and everything. But it is just interesting to see the diversity.
Yeah, I had a property in Port Royal where they actually put lightning rods in the coconut palm.
Really?
Yeah, to try it.
And then they just run the wire down the.
You run the copper. Yeah, you run it down and then put it into the ground on a rod that it's supposed to go down and put it into the soil where it disappears.
Was that effective? Or?
On that type of system, you couldn't tell. That a new one, the new systems have a sort of like a fuse thing in it that where if it does get hit, you can tell it flips it. So on the old systems, you never know if it worked. I mean, if it got hit or not. If it got hit, it worked. But
I mean, we've seen on our, not always, but we've seen on some of our lightning rods when they do get hit, we'll see blackening down on the grounding elements.
Yeah.
And so that's usually what we'll.
Yeah.
How we are.
Yeah, I put a lot of lightning rods in trees, lightning systems in trees, pines and live oaks.
But I think the most common thing we see with palms is Ganoderma.
Yeah. Ganoderma's been around for a while.
Yeah. Isn't that what it's called?
Bud rot.
Yeah, because that's what I always do.
Because it's the bud of the tree, the base of the tree.
Yeah, and it looks like almost like.
Yeah, it's a shelf fungus. It looks like a shelf fungus that you'd see on a log in the woods if you're taking a hike, except it's bigger. Usually it's bigger. It comes from, there's an entry point, obviously, for the disease. The spores, when one of those conchs matures, it releases millions of spores. And they just float around in the air, or they go into the ground, and then groundwater washes them 3 feet down the road, or 10 feet down the road, or into the soil where it gets absorbed by something. So it's pretty hard to get rid of, and it's been going on since the 70s, pretty hard in this area. And the University of Florida's been doing up in its diligence trying to figure out a way to stop it, but there isn't any way. Once it's in the tree, it's there. And they also say that the soil around it can be contaminated with spores for up to 5 years after the tree's gone. So if you wanted to remove the tree, the best thing to do is have the stump dug out and try to get some of that dirt out of it too. Put your palm back in, but you're taking a chance. It may or may not get it. I had a nursery when I was with the city of Naples, up off the Solano Road, and we had a ton of queen palms. So we had some that got Ganoderma, so I started experimenting with it. And after I took the tree out, I put another palm back in its place. Some of them got Ganoderma, some of them didn't.
I would be interested. So I'm assuming it is a higher risk of the ones that did get it versus the ones that didn't, compared to the rest of your nursery.
Yeah, it used to be. It was mostly only queen palm, and then all of a sudden I saw one in a Canary Island date palm. Like, oh, that's. But you don't typically see it in Canary.
I saw one in a sable for the first time. I didn't even know.
You see it in sables. It's usually higher up on the tree on a sable. It's a disease. It actually stains the wood inside the tree, So when you cut that off, you can see it's like black or dark gray right there on the base of it. Usually if you cut the tree 3 feet up, you won't see it, but on a sable palm, you can see it higher up. But I've seen it on royals, foxtails, pygmy dates. It's on it, just about every species around.
But it doesn't infect anything other than palms, right?
Yeah. Okay. There's different varieties of Ganoderma, and I think it's Solanacum. Ganoderma Solanacum is the one that kills palm trees. Other variety, you'll see it, like I said, on a log in the woods. I don't know what variety it is. There's 1,000 species of Ganoderma, and funguses, they grow on dead things. I mean, that's what it's all about. The wood die and the fungus grows from that point.
So, I haven't seen it. In an oak Ganoderma?
Yeah, but it's not that variety.
Oh,
and it's not not necessarily gonna kill it.
Oh, okay.
That's the beauty of nature.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure there's a scientific term for this. I was talking with a friend of mine down where my parents used to live. There was a lady who, I remember when I was very young, put up ficus all around her home, and it was because it was going to be a fence.
Okay.
And this was going to.
Yeah.
Ficus lives forever, and I was a kid, and so I think she was saying, I was probably like 7 or 8, and she was like, ficus lives for hundreds of years over in Italy or something. I don't know, to put up as a hedge. And a couple of years ago, she completely took it out and replaced it with Pelusia. Because ficus is, for those of you who may not be aware, ficus is actually very expensive for us to maintain now because of whitefly. That's a few things, but whitefly in particular is impacting ficus quite a bit, and it's expensive to do the root drenches. Whitefly also affects palms and other stuff, and I don't, again, probably wasn't paying attention when I was 7 years old, but I don't remember whitefly being an issue back then or anyone even talking about it. And now we're all replacing everything with Pelusia. We like these monoculture things. We find something that works. That's the reason I ask you, what's your favorite tree? Because we're just going to put it all over everything. Everything that Newell manages, we're going to put Phil's favorite tree at. Now we're installing Pelusia all over the place because we feel that it's bulletproof, and I don't think anything has started eating it yet.
Not that we know. Not yet.
But I'm worried that 15 or 20 years from now, we're going to be, all the Pelusias getting eaten by...
You grew up here. I came here in 93, and everybody had a ficus. Okay, so you probably know past before that, if there were ficus. It was bulletproof until ficus whitefly showed up in the Miami area.
When was that? Why is it always out of Miami?
Because
you lethal yellow.
Port.
All right.
And these things, they come in from foreign lands on pallets, on other plants. Now there's an inspection process where the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, has board inspectors that, their job is to inspect plants that are going in and out of the country or from Canada to Mexico or wherever. And that's where a lot of these things start. So we had the whitefly, and it, as you said, it did a number, and it's very expensive. And, put all those chemicals into the ground. But it's the only way you can add it to try and save these plants. Then all of a sudden it showed up, 10 years ago or more. Started seeing spiraling whitefly and the Rugose whitefly in beechia palms and coconut palms, and dropping the honeydew all over people's patio furniture and stuff. So haven't seen it too bad lately, but it's still, the ficus whitefly is out there.
So what other pests do you see developing right now? What do you think is going to be our next, what's going to be the next whitefly?
The Clusia aphid.
Is it really?
I don't know. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. It's like, what? Diversification of, planting a 1,000-foot long hedge of one tree or one plant is not taking a chance. Mix it up. Put a 20-foot section of Simpson stopper, viburnum, whatever. Just mix it up. Same with the trees. I mean, there's an oak wilt that's in Texas, and it's in Louisiana, and it could come down this way one day. That's where the lethal yellow type disease that affects medjool palms started in Texas. Phoenix palm decline is the name of the disease, and We had trees in Sarasota that died. So, it's around. It just hasn't worked its way all the way down there yet in a full-blown capacity.
Yeah, the diseases, the insects scare me more because I feel that down here in Southwest Florida, our insects don't die out in the winter.
Yeah, they're tough. They have multiple generations a year.
Yeah. And it never really gets truly cold enough here to
Right.
knock something's population.
Right.
Although I was seeing fireflies recently in the past year
Oh, yeah?
or so. It'd been a long time since I'd seen fireflies in Southwest Florida, and now I'll walk along the Greenway around 8 or 9 o'clock at night when it gets dark, and there's hundreds of fireflies.
Yeah, and they probably came in on something, a camper or something.
Probably.
Yeah.
So we've got the other issues, I guess, that we're starting to see here beyond like the whitefly are like invasive things, and they all seem to have a story behind them, like cane toads. The story I heard with the love bugs. So the story I always heard with love bugs growing up, and I think it was just because somebody didn't like UF, is that UF or FSU, somebody brought these things in to combat the mosquitoes. And now, because also when I was a kid, cars could overheat from the love bugs. I don't know if it was just because we had so many or cars cooling systems were
They're all over the radiator.
But yeah, the radiators,
Yeah.
so you had to like stop and get them out of your radiator when you're driving on I-75. So I think somebody, because I heard both UF and FSU, so I think it was somebody up there with the rivalry, like, let's just blame the Gators, let's blame the Seminoles for this. Cane toads, they blame sugar cane folks, and they said they brought them in intentionally to fight a pest, but I have no idea what pest it would have been.
I don't know that. I have never heard that, but in many cases that's been the case. A lot of stuff was brought in for something good. The Melaleuca tree, when they wanted to dry up the Everglades, portions of the Everglades so they could build, and then it got out of hand. It started all of a sudden.
We call that the paper tree because we pull it off and use it like paper.
Yeah, and the Australian pine was brought in because it was used as a windscreen between fields of whatever that the farmers were growing, and it also kind of just took.
Well, they used to all be down on the beaches too. I think we've gotten rid of them.
When I was with the city, we made a pretty concerted effort to take them down because pelicans were roosting in them, and anything under the pelican, which there was a beach, walk at every avenue in Naples.
Heads.
Everything was covered with white and yellow stuff. It was pretty nice.
The last thing I want to touch on is sort of in the response that we're seeing from associations to trees and how they're trying to manage them. For those of us in Naples, Pelican Bay comes to mind because I think they were one of the first to really have a set system in place.
Yeah.
But we're seeing it at pretty much every larger master association. And what they're asking for is when we remove a tree, and you touched on this in our first session, that there's requirements from the association. And oftentimes what the association is looking, the owner who wants the tree removed or the sub-association, they're saying, well, this tree is damaging a driveway. We want it removed. Let's get it removed now. The association is looking they want an arborist report and a county approval or something, which getting a county approval can be a little complicated if it's a single family home.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you need a county approval to remove a plant or to remove a tree at the single family home sites. So can you talk about how that should work, what you would recommend for masters that are doing this? What can we do to work better with it?
Yeah, so there's a person in charge of that in Pelican Bay, and typically she'll tell that person, get your county approval because it's the same process that we're going to make you do. So yeah, you're getting, even though it's a single family home and you don't have to have permission, the rules of living in Pelican Bay, the covenants they have set up, and I don't know if that's the right word, but they say you have to have approval from the board, not from the county, but from the board. And he just uses that county as, if you got the county says okay, then I'm saying. So it's the same rule as as going to the county if you had to get a permit. A letter from a certified arborist that started, I think, like about 4 years ago when there was a bill introduced into the state house. I think there was an attorney that someone told me couldn't take a tree down that was on his property and kind of pissed him off. But anyway, they introduced this bill, and coming out of that, after all the going back and forth on it, was you can take the tree down as long as you have a letter from a certified arborist, somebody who's certified with the ISA, stating why it needs to come out. It's an issue. It's causing damage or whatever, or it's got structural damage or whatever, it's a dangerous tree. The only problem with that is a lot of guys will, just to get to remove the tree, the money to remove it, they'll just write the letter when there may or may not be anything. Make sure that if you're going to go down that route, make sure you hire an arborist who's going to give you a true opinion of what the tree really is, so it doesn't come back on you later on.
All right, which is what we can call you for.
Yeah, I've been out in lots of homes where I've given people's letters, given people a letter that the tree's either good or bad, and I don't do the removals. I mean,
I didn't. To be honest, I didn't know you did that. I've always been hesitant to ask you for a letter unless.
Yeah, one day I'm going to have to retire, and I'm going to need to keep my hand in it. So it'll be consulting for me. So I'm just practicing.
Gotta keep consulting.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything that you think of that we should have gone over? Or?
No, I mean, I can talk all day about trees. It's just that certain things, specific things that anything. I think we pretty much touched on everything. Take care of your trees prior to hurricane. The most important thing is have your trees inspected once a year or once every 2 years to look for cracks or fungus around the base of them. Usually, if you see a mushroom or fungus, usually that means there's some rot either in the root system or on the base. Check out your palms. Palms are tough because the head's 30 feet in the air. You really can't see what's going on, but a lot of us that aren't in this business, we don't look up. We kind of ignore the color of the palm and stuff like that. So, have somebody who does look up, inspect it and give you an idea of, hey, that could be a problem. You might want to do this. You might want to do that. Things of that nature. I mean, trees are. That's part of the beauty of this area. It's the palm trees and the trees. That's why people live here. A lot of them, in addition to golf and tennis and boating and all that stuff. Good restaurants.
So one of the, interesting things that a lot of folks, I think, are now seeing, a lot of our directors and residents that they hadn't before. Again, we mentioned that hurricanes are happening more often, but there used to not be people here when hurricanes happen. Yeah. Now when hurricanes happen, there are people.
Yeah,
and the trees and plants have very interesting responses following hurricanes. And I don't know what causes this. Again, this is just from me growing up. I know that sometimes, like mango trees, we would sometimes see mango trees after a hurricane do nothing for like a year or two. Sometimes they all of a sudden they go gangbusters and they have blooms everywhere. I don't know what causes.
Okay, so the salt, a lot of times just the salt damage, flooding, salt water, or just the fact that the tree may have been sitting underwater for too long a period of time. It slows up or it messes up the biological system of the tree. The tree may not. The storms from last year weren't accompanied with a lot of rain. So there was a lot of burn on the leaves of not just trees, but all the shrubs, cocoa plum shrubs. We all saw it around town. So that it affected it in that way. And then as it grew out of it, there's still stuff that looks unhealthy. Just hasn't. Summer rains are going to be the best thing for it.
Which we just started getting finally.
Yeah, so hopefully. But there's a lot of trees like the oaks, for instance. They just didn't put on a lot of growth last year. I've got properties off of Coconut Road up in Estero, where like the coconuts are still from Ian. They're still just like hardly anything on, and a lot of dead fronds, and they're not healthy looking. And they were fine before the storm, and it's just gonna, take a while for them to grow out of that.
Is it one of those things where you just wait to see if it does grow out, and if it doesn't,
wait.
Place?
That's what I tell people. Just wait. I mean, water's the best thing for it. You can try to fertilize it, but the thing about it is, if the tree's not healthy and the roots aren't working properly, it's not going to pull the fertilizer up anyway, or if it does, it's going to be a very slow process. So, water's the best thing for it in time. But,
So like on oak, I've been told that when you see volunteers, it means that the tree is unhappy.
A lot of times water sprouts mean stress.
Okay. So, and volunteers are like on the, when I'm talking about
the roots.
Yeah, on the roots,
or
the
on
little
the lower branches, all those water sprouts. Yeah, I mean, usually it means that there's some kind of stress, but I've seen it on healthy trees too. And it's just coming up with the roots, and then people have to spray around up on that. Truthfully, I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to take a chance and see what happens.
I was told in a class that my general answer for if anyone says, can I spray Roundup, it's just no, because we're not supposed to use Roundup. I don't know.
Roundup's turned into one of the, and I will say, I'll go out on record saying Roundup have
Really?
in the lawn and in the household chemicals that we use every day. Roundup is safer than most of them. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Well, so, I found chemicals to be very interesting. This is a very current application for Newell. There's an association that Newell manages where there was a person who's very convinced that there was an issue with their irrigation system. And frankly, we've been in like the worst drought in a quarter of a century. So it wouldn't surprise us if that was the situation. But what had happened was they applied a weed killer to their yard, but they have St. Augustine. So they killed the St. Augustine.
They did the
wrong weed killer.
They were trying to
Yeah,
kill weeds?
they were trying to kill weeds in their
Okay.
lawn,
Yeah.
and I don't believe it was Roundup, although Roundup would have killed St. Augustine too.
Kills is non-selective. Yeah.
But this was something that they had acquired, or I think their neighbor actually acquired it, and they thought it was a selective to only kill weeds and lawn.
Certain kinds of weeds.
But I think it was designed to work on, I don't know, bluegrass or something.
Weeds. The label on chemicals. The label is the law. Those 5 words are what you need to go by. But on that label, it'll tell you what it kills, but it also tells you what not to use it on. And there are chemicals that we can put on zoysia grass that we can't put on St. Augustine grasses. There's stuff you can put on bahia that also you can't put on St. Augustine. So,
Well, St. Augustine grass is sort of a weed.
looks like crabgrass that we have. People up north think it's crabgrass.
And I can understand that, because I mean, it
grows the same way.
grows, with those,
Yeah,
which is what
rhizomes.
we like, because that's the reason it survives.
It fills in. There's a lot of, and there's a lot of varieties of St. Augustine grass. Now we're dealing with that. Now I'm here talking, and it slipped my mind what it's called. It kills St. Augustine grass.
The lethal. Now I can't think of it as well. We just had it up in. I don't want to give the name.
It's mosaic virus. It's the St. Augustine mosaic virus, and it will kill. And you can spread it through mower tires. And I know a community where I'm not going to say the name of it because I don't want to. But yeah, it's not a good one because you can replace the grass and it's still.
Yes. So we have one that's.
And that came from the East Coast also.
Even with all the stuff we have going on. Yeah, we have an association. Again, I'll skip the name of it.
Sorry, it's the sugarcane mosaic virus.
But you have to remove it. So the problem is, and I can see the difficulty for a landscaper. I would like to believe that most of our landscapers probably clean their equipment every night when they get back to the shed, or maybe every morning. But it's difficult to clean between associations.
Right.
Because
between yards.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
that's difficult to do.
Yeah.
Now, this virus, they believe, started this is a larger association, I would say, maybe 1,200 to 1,800 units, something like that, multiple subs. And they did identify it in one of the subs, and then it spread to another. And then by the time I think we got ahead of it, there was probably 400 or 500 homes that were in these associations that had been impacted, but it didn't impact all of the homes. And then when as you mentioned, you can't just remove the grass. They actually had to remove soil because it's in the grass clippings itself.
Yeah.
And so
in the juice, when you cut it or squash it, that spreads.
My solution is just install a different grass.
There are varieties of St. Augustine that they're experimenting with that are not supposed to get it. Super Blue is the name of one of them. But growers are not growing enough of that to help the problem right now.
And that's another area that I feel like we're seeing some difficulty in. This is more recent, just in, I guess, the past, from 10 years ago till today. I find it more difficult to get sod today than I did 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I'm the immediate past president of the Florida Nursery Growers and Landscape Association. We're responsible for over $40 billion worth of revenue in the state of Florida, our organization. And our nursery people are having probably the best 3, 4, 5 year run that they've ever had. They're still growing stuff because a lot of it's because of hurricanes.
So you're saying that as far as their sales go, they're having the best sales.
So the amount of product that's out there, they can't grow enough of it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm running into issues is like when I'm trying to get sod and also just annual flowers. Like we've learned, get your annual flowers locked down because if you didn't lock them down, you're not going to get them.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to get the color you want or whatever you're looking for.
Yeah, we need another person to start growing.
So, and this comes back to the rumors. So the rumors I hear is that there are less people growing now because generationally, there are some people that are just generationally aged out.
Yeah.
And they said, you know what, we've done this. Our kids do not have an
don't
interest,
want it.
and so we're going to sell it.
It's a lot of hard work.
And when they sell, they're not always selling to people that are continuing to do the same thing. They want the land. And so they're selling to developers who are either building, which increases their own demand, but now the supply has been reduced.
Yeah.
And then I realize this is way off topic, but I've heard the fear is that if marijuana legalization had happened, all of a sudden there might be an interest in trying to change the usage of that, depending on what you're going to be making on different types of fields, which would further impact it. And then you have things like sod, which requires huge amounts of areas to grow. And then when we have heavy rains, all of a sudden it's difficult. And from a temperature standpoint, from a weather standpoint, we've been seeing more of those fluctuations.
Yeah.
So those are the rumors, at least.
A lot of that's true. It's a whole bunch of things that play into it. And, the citrus industry is taking a beating over the last 15 years. And now it just gets worse every year. More people are getting out of the business. They're unable to control citrus greening. There's products out there that are supposedly resistant, but, you have to grow the tree first. You go through and you see these white bags around all the small trees. And how does that work when the tree gets bigger? You have to get a really big bag to keep the tree covered, to keep the insect out that carries underneath. But in the middle of the state where a lot of that is happening, a lot of that land is getting sold. And like you said, with the nurseries, the big family home that operated it for 40 years, the kids don't want it. So, there's more value as a real estate development project than just sitting there.
It's going to be an interesting next 10 years.
Yeah, and where we're going.
Well, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. We'll probably have Phil be coming to some of the monthly Newper meetings as well to talk about specific things so that everyone can ask questions for him. And we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.